Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to our friends around the world from across the United States, from South Africa, Australia, the UK, Israel, Mexico, Lithuania, and of course, Australia. Welcome to the David Labkovski Project's 5th annual Scholars event. We are so excited to be honoring Lisa Lina Fagan with the Legacy of Hope Award, California State Senator Henry Stern with the Recognition Award, and our students from South Africa, Eva Trope and Lexi Price with the Youth Leadership Award. We are honored to have at our event Los Angeles Council Member Bob Blumenfield, Israel Consul General Hillel Newman, California State Senator Henry Stern, and LA City Controller Ron Gelperin. In our brief time together today, we will provide an opportunity for you to learn about the David Labkovski Project and the critical and impactful work we are doing in Holocaust education. We will share how we have pivoted during the pandemic and our plans for the future. In 2015, a group of women came together: Lisa Lina Fagan, Stephanie Wilson, and Connie Marco. Together with myself, we had this vision of using the over 400 pieces of narrative art created by my great uncle David Labkovski as a tool to educate and engage audiences from all backgrounds and from around the world in Holocaust education. We realized that the uniqueness of our program centered around the universal language of art and the ability of narrative art to reach and engage audiences from all backgrounds. Along with our project-based curriculum and the transfer of ownership and responsibility onto students who become curators, docents, and educators to their peers and community. In 2016, we implemented the David Labkovski Project program for the first time at a school in Los Angeles with 8th grade students. Not a single student had ever heard of the Holocaust. We shared these results with members of the community, and often it fell on deaf ears. But this group of women was undeterred, totally dedicated, and believed in this way of teaching through the art. Under the guidance of Stephanie Wilson, our Director of Education, we continued offering programs to middle schools, high schools, and colleges, allowing students to engage with the art, learn through the art, and in the process, transferring ownership and responsibility. There have been many highlights over the past 5 years, but if I have to name a few, I have to say exhibiting at West Point Military Academy and having the exhibit up for 6 weeks, and then being able to teach our program to officers and cadets along with professors, and seeing these officers and cadets engage with the art, writing poetry, learning about Jewish history, and learning about the Holocaust through the art was truly an amazing experience. Another highlight was having the exhibit at the Lithuanian National Library in Vilna, and the exhibit was co-curated by students from South Africa, America, and Lithuania. I'd say a third highlight was bringing the exhibit along with our student docents up to the state capitol in Sacramento for Yom HaShoah last year, and having these students educate members of the community through David Labkovski's art. It's really been an honor to implement our program, our semester-long program, at schools and universities and colleges in Mexico, in the US, in South Africa. Some of the schools that we've really enjoyed and had a long-term relationship with: Loyola Marymount University, Daniel Pearl Magnet High School, and really being able to share our program throughout the world with middle, high school, college level students is really a unique experience, and once again goes back to the universal language of art, and how it's able to draw people in and really to engage them and to open up these amazing conversations. David Labkovski's art provides a powerful tool to connect with history, to start these difficult conversations about anti-Semitism, discrimination, survival, and resilience. The uniqueness of the David Labkovski Project lies in its project-based approach to fusing Holocaust education, history, and art with an underlying mission of tolerance and empathy, while at the same time actively empowering students to bear witness and to become storytellers. When the pandemic hit in March 2020, the David Labkovski Project had 3 concurrent exhibits across the country, along with several programs at schools and universities. We quickly had to pivot, and in doing so, we truly opened up our program and the reach of the program internationally. We created a virtual student-docent training program with students participating from 17 different schools, 2 continents, and several states. Some of these student docents are with us today. Our pivot also included a virtual Holocaust commemoration event with an audience of over 500 people and included participants from Orthodox, Reform, and conservative organizations. In light of the pandemic and the ability for us to adapt to the virtual world, we initiated a Reflect and Respond program, which we opened up to adults and students, inviting them to write poetry in response to David Labkovski's art. We had entries from Croatia to Mexico, South Africa, and across the United States. During the pandemic, we also created 2 online exhibits and offered free teacher training sessions and lesson plans to educators. While we are still in the midst of the pandemic, for Yom HaShoah 2021, we will once again invite submissions for Holocaust commemoration. We have just launched a new international leadership program for students 18 to 22, which will empower college students to learn about the Holocaust and be able to educate their peers and bring the program back onto their college community. This summer, we'll see the launch of the David Labkovski Project's adult program, which will teach adults how to read and interpret Labkovski's art while understanding the historical, political, and personal context. For the second time, we'll be launching our virtual international student-docent training program for middle and high school students. Applications for the program will open in spring. It is with immense gratitude to our honorary chairs and especially to our diamond sponsors, Ellie and Mark Liner, proud parents of Lisa. Thank you to our DLP board, our advisory board, the most unbelievable event committee, and my most dedicated and hard-working event co-chairs, Malky Roden, Connie Marco, Evelyn Cotton. You guys go above and beyond every day. And from the bottom of my heart, Deborah Levine and Bev Bratskus, our auction chairs, truly phenomenal what you guys have created, the time, the energy, the effort, the research that went into creating a virtual silent auction. You guys amaze me every single day. To our incredible honoree, Lisa Liner Fagan, I love you, I respect you, I admire you. You are so accomplished. You do so much for so many people. You are an incredible, incredible woman, an amazing daughter, wife, mother, daughter-in-law, sister, friend to so many. Mazel tov, congratulations, our Legacy of Hope Award winner.
Hello, I'm Los Angeles Controller Ron Galprin, and I'm so pleased to join you all for this special celebration. As the son of a Holocaust survivor, the David Labkovski Project's advocacy and work around engaging and educating students on the history of the Holocaust is something very near and dear to my heart. While my father and grandparents were fortunately able to make their way out of Romania to Israel and eventually to the United States, millions of people in our community and so many others perished in the Holocaust. It is critical that we honor their memories by inspiring this generation and future generations to stand up to genocide, hatred, bigotry, anti-Semitism, and discrimination of all types through advocacy and education. On behalf of the City of Los Angeles, congratulations to today's honorees, and thank you to the David Labkovski Project and each and every one of you. With that said, I'd like to introduce this year's Legacy of Hope Award recipient, the great Lisa Lehner-Fagan.
As the daughter of Holocaust survivors, the David Labkovski Project and all of you who support our mission are like family. I would like to take a moment and share with you a short story about how my family expanded in the spring of 2019. My father, Joshua Kaufman, was invited to the state capitol in Sacramento for Holocaust Remembrance Day. He was accompanied by my two younger sisters, Rachel and Alexandra, and they were traveling with members and students of the David Labkovski Project, as well as elected officials of the Jewish Caucus. From the moment my family met Senator Stern at the airport, there was an instant connection. Upon their return, I hosted my family for Shabbat dinner and was asked to add an extra seat at the table for a special guest they met up north. Today, I have the privilege of introducing that special guest, my now brother-in-law, California State Senator Henry Stern, who has made Holocaust education a central focus in his personal life and his political platform. It is my honor to present him with the DLP 2021 Recognition Award. Mazal tov, Henry.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Malky. For today's purposes, I will not talk about you as my sister-in-law. You've already spilled all the beans about our crazy path to this moment. B'sheret, right? I would just say it's an honor to be amongst leaders. And Malky, in your own right, you are truly a leader in this community. And if you think that all those busy moments of being on these text exchanges and all the forums and all the email updates and all that sort of daily back and forth is not leadership, then you got another thing coming, because you're stitching a community together. And that's what DLP really is. Mostly just power Jewish women. Frankly, I'm happy to be an ally today, but when you look at your board, or even look at Lisa, who's being honored today, but Jennifer too, and Laura Beth, and Rabbi Lieberman, and Leora, and all through your ranks, Stephanie, it's just power women fueling this project. And no wonder. The understanding of the importance of the next generation and the sacred role that education plays in not forgetting our past and in not losing a sense of ourselves. This is really what's going to fuel us forward. When we can let a young person actually get inside the life and the mind of someone who lived 60, 70, 80 years before they did and saw things that they think are impossible to see. Went through something like the Holocaust that is truly irreplicable and unimaginable. To make it come to life is sacred work. So I'm honored to be among the honored. Lisa Lehner-Fagan gets that this education is our DNA and our only path to not just bring light to ourselves, but to heal the whole world. BJE, the Federation, her work at Heschel, and D. Toledo. I mean, the list goes on. A true powerhouse. And look, I'm a public servant here, so I actually have limited power, despite what you may think about politics these days. When things are going right, you all are the solution. It's only when they go wrong and we become the problem that you have to overly invest yourselves in this crazy business. But I think at its most earnest core, what we do in public service here is try to shed light on the work you're doing. So I'm moving the Never Again Education Act, for instance, this year. We're We're going to try to mainstream some of this really innovative curriculum work you've been doing to the curriculum of California. But I'm just enabling it through legislation. You're all designing it and making it happen and being the pilots for this progress. So it's a really cool job, and I'm grateful to do it for you. And it's nice also every once in a while to have somebody say thank you. So the award today means a great deal to me. And I'll just say, this organization, the role you play out in the community, but really the role you play beyond in California could not come at a more crucial time. My generation, it's a recent survey, I don't know if you all saw, but I think about a quarter of millennials don't even know what the Holocaust was or wasn't sure it happened. And I think it was 2/3 couldn't identify Auschwitz and weren't sure of its significance, and that the numbers get even worse the younger you go. So it's an astonishing time of disconnect, that there is no history and there is no past. It's just Facebook, Twitter, and the future. And the fact is, we do come from somewhere, and there's a lot of darkness, but the perseverance is there too. So thank you for being a light in a really dark moment. And I stand with you and to tell this story of David Labkovski through the eyes of technology and the imagination of young people. I think we can move mountains. Take care out there and be good to each other.
This experience for me as a non-Jewish American growing up, all I've learned is just like little snippets about the Holocaust. This artwork that Labkovski has shared, you can see like the true emotion of what the Holocaust actually was and what those who experienced the Holocaust firsthand actually went through. And it really hits home, even though you yourself cannot have any sort of connection to this event yourself, but you get the feeling of what these human beings went through.
I'm Leora Raikin. I'm the founder and executive director of the David Labkovski Project, and I'm also the great niece of the artist David Labkovski. The David Labkovski Project uses over 400 pieces of art by David Labkovski that document life before, during, and after the Holocaust. We use these pieces of art to educate and engage audiences throughout the world.
The David Labkovski Project uses the artwork as a tool of engagement to look at his life story and the story of his community, the people of Vilna, current-day Vilnius, Lithuania, both his personal story in the Siberian Gulag under Stalin and his return to face the destruction of his community under the Nazis.
When I first saw the artwork, I'd look at the pictures and they had such emotion in them. And I'd see pictures in black and white that were similar in subject matter, but the painting spoke more to me than the actual photograph did because of the colors and the expressions on the faces and the mood of the painting, that it was really like made you cry just to look at it.
It wasn't enough just to exhibit the art. We had to use the art as an educational opportunity. We developed an educational program that's multidisciplinary, that's project-based, but that ultimately transfers responsibility onto the individual student. Our end goal is a student-curated exhibit.
I feel like so much of what we learn is through a history book or through literature that I've read in class. So learning about it through art gives a whole new context to it, and I'm able to relate to it in another way.
They decide which paintings they're going to use in this exhibit that they're going to create for their peers and for their community.
And as a curator, they need to know everything about the artist and the time period in which the artist lived. It's like an onion, different layer upon layer upon layer. The history, the creative writing, the secondary research, the primary research, but all the time coming back to the art.
The project does that better than almost any other kind of engaged learning project I've worked with as a teacher of the Holocaust, because it gives us all of that at once, and we learn about the individuals as well as how to tell their story.
We need to not only understand how people died, but how they lived.
We designed a virtual reality experience for students of all ages, can put on these goggles and step into 2 of his paintings. And inside you hear the story of the people of Vilna.
I've never done VR before, but I was really excited to actually step into the world of the painting. Not only did I get to look around and have a 360 view of what the space would look like, but I got to interact with the characters. It's something that you don't get by just looking at a painting.
We have seen over and over again the enjoyment and unexpected level of excitement and interaction that people of all ages, from 8 to 98, have with the virtual experience. They literally stepping into the past by leaping into the future.
One of our top goals and in our mission statement is to bear witness to the history. But what does it really mean to bear witness? Our hope is, and what we have seen through students' reactions to the project, is that it does in fact begin to shift their perspectives.
I got to learn a ton about immigrants and the entire immigration movement and the history behind that and the struggles that people continue to go through after the Holocaust. So that was a really big thing for me and really opened my eyes to a lot more about the Holocaust.
Now with what's going on in the world and all this hate, our program is right here, right now, ready to go and can address that in many, many schools.
Our program is an inoculation against bigotry, discrimination, and hate.
Donating to the David Labkovski Project is really a donation into our future and the future of our society.
One person, one lecture, one lesson, one workshop at a time. We are changing the world. We are changing people's level of knowledge, their understanding, through the David Labkovski Project. Help us to reach, teach, and engage as many people as possible.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Wolfson, the Director of Education for the David Labkovski Project. One student, one school, one community at a time. That is how we measure success. Where this year certainly has not been the year any of us imagined, as we celebrate 5 years of engaging, enriching, and educating audiences and students of all ages and backgrounds, I can honestly say that we are making a difference. How do I know we're reaching audiences in a deep and meaningful way? I know because I see it every day in the students and adults I engage with that are part of the David Labkovski Project programs. I see it in Sam and Sophia, 2 high school volunteers who have found working with the David Labkovski Project and Labkovski's artwork meaningful. Sam created the presentation you viewed at the beginning of the Scholars event, and Sophia is working on our educational programs. She has read and analyzed the diary of our scholar, Dr. Good's parents and grandfather, to make our unit of study stronger for the future. Both students continue to volunteer with us. We can look to Sarah, who curated an exhibit with her class as part of the Loyola Marymount University community in 2019. She has returned as an organizational volunteer, but also to be a mentor to this year's students. You can see our impact in the reflections written by students from the University of Washington after participating in a workshop. They wrote I Am poems based on the characters in Labkovski's pieces. Look for samples of their work in an upcoming newsletter. We can look to Weston, a USC student and the designer of the David Labkovski Project virtual reality, stepping into the past. He understood that the VR cannot be accessed during the pandemic, so he took it to the 2020 virtual USC Gaming Expo, where he opened the history up to a much wider audience. Our impact expanded this year to Mexico City, where Jackie, the Jewish Studies Coordinator at Colegio de Israelitas, was undeterred by the world of Zoom education. We met her needs for the virtual classroom, and the students benefited. Many commented on the deep connection they felt to the artwork. They are taking the meaning of bearing witness seriously and to heart. You can view their commemoration journal on our website. See for yourself the power of our programming. Look to Lucy and Miranda, both part of the virtual student docent program. They recognize the power of the artwork to connect to audiences. Lucy said, through talking about Labkovski's work depicting the Holocaust, even though it's hard, she is carrying the victim's memory with her and sharing that responsibility to bear witness. Miranda came back to the DLP as a senior in high school after participating in the educational program in 8th grade. She wanted to return to art programs because of the deep connection that artwork provides. You can hear Lucy, Miranda, and other student docents share their thoughts on Labkovski's artwork. Their tour begins immediately following the program today. Just remain online. One person, one school, one community at a time. I have shared just a few moments, a small glimpse into the impact we're making every day. Our educational programs and exhibits are making a difference. We are carrying David Labkovski's legacy and memory forward in the work that we're doing. Today, we celebrate our accomplishments and growth. Because of your support, we are able to do the work of engaging, enriching, and educating students from all over the world. Today, we honor 2 students that exemplify the David Labkovski Project's mission and vision. They inspire and drive me forward. They are both physically far away from Los Angeles in Johannesburg, South Africa, but they are near and dear to my heart. Lexi Price and Eva Trope. Eva's involvement with the DLP began with a beautifully written entry in the 2020 Reflect and Respond program. Because of the time difference to South Africa, she had to wake up at 2 a.m. to read her poem during the commemoration ceremony. She not only did that, but she also woke up at 2 a.m. to rehearse the day before. I knew just then what a special girl we had. Her drive, her commitment, and intelligence shine through in everything she does. After the program, Eva volunteered to deepen her involvement. She was instrumental in curating the exhibit that opened at the Holocaust Museum, Los Angeles, Recalling a Lost World, David Labkovski brings Sholom Aleichem stories to life. Now, Eva is part of our student docent training program, and once again, she has stepped up to edit the online exhibit as a curator to prepare for the exhibit's launch in April. Lexi has been instrumental in spreading the David Labkovski Project's mission and the relevance of his work in Johannesburg. Lexi was part of the first ambassador program, participating over the internet. She has written articles and promoted our work, bringing Labkovski's work to her school, sharing it with a greater audience. Lexi joined the David Labkovski Project in Vilnius to walk in Labkovski's footsteps. She brought her intelligence and kind mannerisms to become more than a colleague with students from LA and from Vilnius. She became a trusted partner. Where Lexi is currently part of the student docent program, we look forward to her hopefully participating in the University Leadership Program launching this spring to bring the lessons found in Labkovski's work to campuses worldwide. Please welcome Lexi and Eva, this year's Youth Award recipients.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I would just like to say good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Board of Directors, Council Member Bob Blumenfeld, Consul General Dr. Newman, Lisa Fagan, and Senator Stern. It was a Friday night in 2019 in Vilna, Lithuania. I walked into the Choral Synagogue and was faced with a quote by Yossi Bunker that has changed my perspective on Holocaust education completely. It read, "It is not only important to remember how these people died, but also how they lived." And this is what the David Labkovski Project embodies. I joined the project in 2017 when I asked Leora to come tell Labkovski's story at my school Yeshiva College. Since then, we have gone on Chai FM radio. I've written an article in the Jewish Life magazine. We have curated many exhibits together, and I was given the incredible opportunity to go to Lithuania in 2019 to walk in Labkovski's footsteps. And most recently, I was part of the student docent program of 2021. As each successive generation moves further away from the Holocaust, the challenges of Holocaust education increase. This was the main reason that I was ardent to join the program, as it overcomes these challenges by teaching the history of the Jewish people in Eastern Europe before World War II, during the Holocaust in Lithuania, and afterwards, thereby illustrating the resilience of the human spirit. I am so honored to be receiving the David Labkovski's Youth Award for 2021, along with my friend Eva Trope, and I am so grateful to Leora and Stephanie for the opportunities that they have given me. I am proud to introduce my fellow student ambassador and friend Eva Trope. Eva is currently in grade 10 at Yeshiva College and shares my passion for Holocaust education. She has impacted the project already, and there's no one more deserving of this award. Ladies and gentlemen, Eva Trope.
Good afternoon, board members, senator, ladies and gentlemen. For some of us, it's hardly afternoon, rather around 10 p.m. But don't worry, I'm used to working on LA time. My first meeting with Stephanie and Leora was at 1 a.m. So why, you ask, do Lexi and I stay up until all hours of the night? Because the David Labkovski Project is the most amazing organization, filled with the most amazing people, and going to bed in the morning is a small price to pay to be a part of it. Lexi introduced me and the rest of our school to the David Labkovski Project last year, when she told us about a poetry competition they were doing. Through the competition, I met Stephanie and Leora. When I asked how I could help out, Stephanie threw me straight into the deep end, offering me the task of co-curating an exhibit for the Los Angeles Holocaust Museum. It was a long few months of hard work, late nights, and bad Wi-Fi, but I learned so much. The reality of the treachery of the Holocaust really sunk in, as well as the picturesque fantasy that slowly diminished in Labkovski's art as times grew tougher. It became obvious to me that I had to be a part of this, to tell his story and to commemorate the events described to me by his paintbrush. So I joined the student docent training program, where along with some incredible people, I was shown how to do so. Stephanie enthusiastically taught us how to interpret colors, shapes, and characters in every piece, as well as Labkovski's story. I loved every second and wanted more people to also get the chance to do so. So Lexi and I tried our best to spread the word in South Africa, from managing the Instagram page to getting the project in the newspaper and on the radio, with of course the help of Leora. Every moment working on every one of these things, and every conversation with everyone involved, has been a truly inspiring experience. My name is Eva Trope, and I'm in grade 10 at Yeshiva College in Johannesburg, South Africa. I love making my own art, debating, learning philosophy and maths, and trying to make the world a better place. I honestly believe that the David Labkovski Project is making the world a better place, which is why I'm so honored to be here with you. You are the David Labkovski Project, and you are the change in the world that I want to be. Thank you.
For me, it was when we went to the Ponar Forest. We went with a bunch of people from the project, and I was absolutely blown away by the response. We went with students that had been to this forest like 3 or 4 times for educational purposes, students that lived in Lithuania and knew the historical value of this forest. But once they had heard our story and once they had heard Leora speaking about her family and me speaking and Stephanie speaking, they were absolutely taken aback, and they completely had a changed narrative of the entire history of their country. That really impacted me.
I would say that I really learned about the value of education and how much it can just change people's perspectives. Like how with the student docent training program, like our first session, everyone was a bit clueless and we were just not really sure about any of the paintings or the history. And then like as time went on, we really like started to understand and give our ideas. And I can just really see that spreading into the world and hopefully just commemorating and spreading.
Hi, I'm Beverly Bretzkis.
And I'm Deborah Levine. We're the co-chairs for this year's online auction. Bidding has begun, but you have until Tuesday at noon, Pacific Standard, to place your bids and support the mission of the David Labkovski Project.
Some of the items we're auctioning include getaways to Mammoth and Palm Springs, wine tasting, pickleball lessons, fine jewelry, and more. Our featured auction item is a 10-day trip on the Danube River from Prague to Budapest, courtesy of Uniworld Cruises. This cruise features a Jewish heritage program led by DLP's founder, Leora Rakin.
You can also support DLP by purchasing classes, swag, or by making a direct donation through the DLP Dreams section of our online catalog. Bidding, shopping, and donating are easy. Just go to the DLP website, click on For More Information, then register to bid, and then sign in.
We hope you'll have fun viewing our online auction items and that you'll bid high and bid often. Thank you.
Well, hello. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today to speak on behalf of the David Labkovski Project. Now, as we know, David Labkovski was an artist who lived in pre-war Vilna, and while he spent the war years in Siberia, did return after the war, and much of the paintings that he's left us take place in pre-war Vilna and during the war. And so in many ways, David Labkovski has painted my family history. My parents are both Holocaust survivors from Vilna, and my interest in Holocaust history began in 1999 when, after many years of avoiding the Holocaust, I finally screwed up my courage and asked my parents to join me and my young family for a family roots trip back to Vilna, Poland, which today is called Vilnius, Lithuania, to explore our family roots and to hear their tales of survival. And so, we first followed them around and had them show us their childhood homes, showed us their schools, the streets that they played in as children, where they had a fairly happy childhood. And then we began to trace their stories of survival during the Holocaust. Now, in June of 1941, there were about 100,000 Jews in and around Vilna when the Germans first occupied the area. 3 years later, when the Soviet army liberated Vilna, only 2,000 Jews were left alive. And so it became clear to me that my parents' survival was some kind of miracle, that 98% of the Jews in the area had died, and yet somehow my parents had lived, and this allowed my family to live as well. So during this trip, my mother took us first to the Vilna ghetto, where she had spent 2 unhappy years as a 12 to 14-year-old, locked into a 3 square block area, never having the chance to see a tree, never even glimpsing the sun. She and her parents managed to survive the actions carried out by the Nazis and their Lithuanian collaborators for 2 long years. And then in September of 1943, 1 week before the Vilna ghetto was to be liquidated and its 15,000 remaining inhabitants killed, she and the other Jews who worked for a German army unit called HKP 562 were taken out of the ghetto and taken to a slave labor camp which had hastily been built on the outskirts of town. And my mother and grandparents and other prisoners came to understand that their rescue, their being snatched from the jaws of death, was due to the efforts of the commander of the HKP unit, a certain Major Plage, who had arranged for their transport out of the ghetto just before it was liquidated. My mother took us to the former HKP slave labor camp, and standing in that courtyard, she described how for the next 9 months, the 1,257 Jews in that camp were kept relatively safe from the murderous grasp of the SS. And I have a very vivid memory of this moment. My mom, she's an elderly woman. She's got gray hair. She walks with a cane. But she became very animated when she was talking about this Plage character. She was waving her cane at us and saying he was better than Schindler. When I asked my mother what became of this German officer, she replied that no one knew, that Plage and the men of his unit had retreated to the west in July of 1944 and disappeared, and no one had heard from him again. And so I was left with this mystery that just kept on going on in my head over and over. Who was this man, this Major Plage, and why would a staff officer in the Wehrmacht, the German army, be busy trying to protect and save Jews when the rest of his comrades in arms seemed totally committed to exterminating Jews from the face of Europe? And so I decided to begin a quest to try to find this unusual man and try to understand who he was and why he acted in such a benevolent way. So using the power of this new tool, the internet, this is back in 1999, I was able to gather camp survivors and historians around the world, from Germany, France, Canada, Israel, the United States. And over the course of the next 5 years, we were able to slowly piece together and uncover a remarkable story. We learned that Major Plage's full name was Karl Plage, and that he came from Darmstadt, Germany. He was a veteran of World War I and fought in some of the major battles of that war, but eventually was captured by the British and spent 2 years as a POW in England. When he returned home to Germany, he found a nation in chaos. Rampant unemployment, the economy was in ruins, there was social unrest and riots. Things were really a mess. And he had always wanted to be a physician, but due to the family's financial situation, had to take a shorter course of study in engineering. And in spite of his engineering degree, he still had difficulty finding employment. And then in 1929, as the world descended into the Great Depression, things went from bad to worse. And thus we find that in 1931, he became attracted to and interested into the promises of the National Socialist Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. And as a patriotic German, he believed in Hitler's promise to restore order, to rebuild the economy and end unemployment, and rebuild German pride. And so we see that at an early time, with the encouragement of his wife's family, who were very enthusiastic members of the Nazi Party, that he joined the Nazi Party in 1931 and began to work on behalf of the party to further their political cause. However, after Hitler gained control of Germany in 1933, he began to have misgivings about the Nazis. both for their ruthless treatment of their political opponents and because he just didn't mesh with them interpersonally. He found that Nazi officials were what he would later call loudmouths and braggarts. But most importantly, he was a man of science, and he came from a scientific family, and he didn't believe the Nazi racial theories. And more importantly, he refused to teach the Nazi racial theories. And this refusal brought him into increasing amounts of conflict with Nazi Party officials, so much so that he was accused of being a friend of Jews and Freemasons and drummed out of the party leadership in Darmstadt. As the 30s went on, he could see some of the hardships that the Nazi racial laws caused to some of his Jewish friends. Now, in 1939, we all remember that World War II did start, and Plage, like millions of other Germans, was drafted into the Wehrmacht. And he was put in charge of an engineering unit, HKP 562, and this unit repaired German army vehicles behind the front lines. And so he and his men soon found themselves in Vilna, Poland, in July of 1941, at a time when the slaughter of Jews was in full swing. And Plage would later write that, quote, "I saw unbelievable things that I could not support. And it was then that I decided to work against the Nazis." And it appears that Karl Plage felt guilty, that he felt responsible, that he had helped create the monster that he saw at work around him in Vilna, Poland, that he had unwittingly helped create this genocidal machine that he saw at work in Vilna. And so he began to get to work. And so what did he do? At that time, the Jews had all been crowded into the Vilna ghetto, and the SS would make sweeps of the Vilna ghetto and capture Jews and take them to a killing ground called Ponari outside of town, where eventually 100,000 people, mostly Jews, would be shot during the course of the Nazi occupation. However, Karl Plage went into the Vilna ghetto and began giving specifically Jewish workers work permits. These were called life certificates, and these would protect the person who held the certificate from being arrested. And this certificate would certify the holder as being a skilled craftsman needed for the war effort, protected not only the worker, but also the worker's wife and 2 children. So one life certificate would protect 4 Jewish lives. And so in all, Plage gave out over 250 of these life certificates and managed to protect 1,000 Jews from arrest and murder. And in addition, he also analyzed the situation and took efforts to try to ensure this group of people's survival. He found them extra sources of food to supplement the starvation rations that the SS gave them. He brought medical doctors into the unit and had medical clinics to provide care for them when they were sick. He got firewood to help keep their apartments warm and also provided them with warm clothing. Sometimes if some of his workers would be inadvertently picked up during an SS sweep, he would go to the SS prison and free them before they could be killed. And so for 2 years, these efforts really worked quite well. And as the Jewish population of Vilna shrank and shrank, these 1,000 Jews had this protective bubble around them and were largely protected from the killing going on around them. But in September of 1943, Karl Plage learned that the Vilna ghetto, along with all the Jewish ghettos in Eastern Europe, was to be liquidated and the final solution finished. And so he went into some intense bureaucratic activity, going first to the Wehrmacht headquarters and then the SS headquarters to argue that he needed to take his Jews out of the ghetto and set up a freestanding camp on the outskirts of town. And he said that his workers were essential for the war effort, and that he argued not only on behalf of his male skilled craftsmen, but he also insisted that the women and children not be separated from the men, because he said that the unit's high level of efficiency and productivity was due to the level of motivation of the men, which was very much fostered by having their wives and children with them. And so even though he got quite a bit of resistance from the SS, he eventually was successful, and on September 16th, 1943, came into the Vilna ghetto in the dead of night with a convoy of trucks and took over 1,000 Jews out of the Vilna ghetto to the relative safety of the newly established HKP slave labor camp. 1 week later, the Vilna ghetto was liquidated, and the remaining Jews of Vilna were killed at Panare or sent to concentration camps in other parts of Eastern Europe. And so for the next 9 months, Plage's Jewish workers again remained in the relative safety of this camp. He gave orders that the civilians were to be treated with respect, and he enforced those orders. And he again provided food and medical care to the workers. However, the fact of the matter was that these Jews were the property of the SS, who only rented them to the Wehrmacht and got rent for their slave labor. And their ultimate murderous intent was demonstrated on several occasions. Once in November of 1943, when they brought a couple and their young child who had escaped from the camp and publicly executed them in front of the other prisoners. And most horribly, on March 27th, 1944, during a time when Plage was home in Germany on leave, they came into the camp and carried out a kinder action and captured and killed the majority of the children in the camp. And thus, their ultimate plans for these Jews were well understood. Now, as the summer of 1944 approached, the Red Army was advancing from the east, and it was clear that before too long they would liberate Vilna. And while the prisoners were very overjoyed that Vilna was to be liberated and that the Germans were losing the war, they also were filled with fear, because they knew very well that whenever the SS retreated from an area, that they killed any remaining Jews shortly before the retreat. So the time of liberation was one of great danger. And the Jews made preparations for this. They had escape plans, and they constructed hiding places called Malines. But what they really needed to know was, when was the SS coming to kill them? Because if you had made a hole under a floor and were crouching in this hole with your family, but you had no food, no water, no toilet facilities in the heat of summer, how long could you last? Maybe a couple of days. So it was imperative that they know when was the SS coming. And as the sound of fighting grew closer and closer to Vilna, the tension in the camp rose higher and higher, and people were really filled with fear. And so on July 1st, 1944, Major Plage came into the camp and made a little speech. And he gathered the prisoners around him, and he said, well, as you know, my men and I are relocating to the West. We had wanted to take you, our very valuable Jewish workers, with us, but unfortunately this won't be possible. However, you shouldn't worry, because on Monday, July 3rd, you too will be relocated, and during your relocation, you will be escorted by the SS, which, as you know, is an organization devoted to the protection of refugees. So when the Jews heard this hidden warning that the SS was coming on Monday, they knew that the time of danger was now. And so over the next day, they carried out their escape plans or went into hiding, so that when the SS did appear on Monday, July 3rd, only half of the prisoners appeared at roll call, mainly older people or people who didn't have a hiding place. And these 500 prisoners were taken to Panare and shot and killed. The SS then scoured the camp looking for their missing victims and succeeded in about finding half of them. And these 250 Jews were shot on the spot in the camp courtyard. But in the end, when the Red Army liberated Vilna, over 250 Jews emerged from hiding, including my mother and grandparents. And these 250 Jews represent the single largest group of Jewish survivors of the Holocaust in Vilna. So what are we to make of these stories? Well, first of all, they do remind us of humanity's tendency, ability to be incredibly cruel, vicious, and our tendency toward bigotry and racism. As we've heard President Biden recently say, we must remember. And when it comes to the Holocaust, we're entering a time when those who saw and experienced the war firsthand are fading from view. And it's no coincidence that now recently we've had this big upsurge of white supremacism and bigotry and nationalism as the veterans of World War II and the Holocaust survivors are no longer with us. This is why the David Labkovski Project is so important. For through his paintings, along with stories told by survivors, such as my mother and father, we must retain those memories. We have to enable new generations to learn this history long after the witnesses to the show are no longer here to sound their warnings. Now, these stories are not just an attestation of humanity's capacity for evil, but they also point out our possibility for acting with great nobility and moral courage toward our fellow human beings in distress. And I often note that Karl Plage was no kind of swashbuckling, gun-waving hero. He played the Nazi slave labor system against its own genocidal goals, but he did it very, very carefully. And he would later say, quote, "I am no kind of hero. I am actually a very nervous person." I like this quote very much because it speaks to those of us who feel that we too are ordinary people, not braver than average, that perhaps we too can look around ourselves into our spheres of influence to help people in distress, and that perhaps even ordinary people like you and me are capable of changing the world for the better. And so I hope that through efforts like the David Labkovski Project and efforts to tell the story of the Holocaust, that we can all carry the lessons that come out of that dark period forward to the betterment of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing your powerful and moving story. We so appreciate and are so honored to have you as our keynote speaker. Thank you. While the world may be on hiatus, anti-Semitism and discrimination do not take a break. I don't need to share with you the rise in anti-Semitic incidences, the lack of Holocaust knowledge. We don't need more surveys or research to tell us this. While David Labkovski's art documents a time of fear and uncertainty, it also reflects the strength and the resilience of the human spirit, along with the cathartic use of art as a tool to heal. David Labkovski left us a visual diary, a vehicle for generations to connect with the past and become a witness to history. There is no excuse for not learning about the Holocaust. The David Labkovski Project provides cutting-edge educational programs that merge art, technology, and history, along with transferring ownership and personal responsibility. Our mission is to ensure that all middle school, high school, and college level students have access to our programs, and that every child receives impactful and meaningful Holocaust education. Each of us has a moral and social obligation to learn and share the history of the Holocaust and to make sure that today's students receive those lessons. Today we ask you to become a witness to history, to share the critical work the David Labkovski Project is doing, and to help us make our programs accessible throughout the world. Now, more than ever, we need the financial support of you, our community, because your donations ensure the long-term health and viability of our educational mission. As the David Labkovski Project leans into 2021, we know now more than ever that Holocaust education is critical and that our curriculum offers an inoculation against the hate that is spreading across the globe. The best way to support the David Labkovski Project and the important work we are doing is by donating at www.davidlabkovskiproject.org or by supporting us in our Fund a Need program through our silent auction. Thank you for your support.
Last year, it was my privilege to be the David Labkovski Project's Legacy of Hope honoree, following in the footsteps of the great Connie Marco. This year, it's my turn to pass the baton to Lisa Leiner-Fagan. Lisa, we are so excited for you. Your commitment to the project since it first began is nothing short of amazing, and our families have known each other for many years, which makes this even more special for all of us. Congratulations on this very well-deserved honor.
Lisa, I'm proud of everything you've done for the David Labkovski Project. During the 26 years since we first met at Federation's Jewel of the Month program, I learned firsthand how your true passions are all about Jewish education and genealogy. As a team, you, Lior, and the entire DLP board has done a wonderful job in educating the wider community about the Holocaust through the artwork of David Labkovski as he portrayed Jewish life before and during the Holocaust. We often hear the saying, never forget, as it relates to the Shoah. Your team's efforts related to this project help ensure that a wider audience of humanity will never forget. Lisa, you're a terrific wife and mother to our 3 wonderful children, Ari, Zev, and Sarah. You have nurtured a loving household which embodies the best of our heritage and religion. Congratulations on this honor, Lisa. I love you.
Thank you, Brian, for being such a supportive husband. I could not do what I do without your love and encouragement. I'm lucky to have such a wonderful partner who is an incredible father to our 3 awesome kids, Ari, Zev, and Sarah. To Jeff Kabolnik, thanks for passing the torch. We loved honoring you last year. Now I would like to take you back to February 1934. 20-year-old Chayasora Rafalin left her little village of Punsk in northeastern Poland and took a long journey to Mexico City. My grandmother, my dear Baba, was the youngest of 7 children. In 1934, 3 brothers were already living in Mexico, but she left behind 3 other siblings and their families in Poland. This is a picture of my grandmother and her oldest brother, Chaim Tzvi, standing in front of the fountain at Saxon Garden in Warsaw. Chaim Tzvi accompanied her as far as Warsaw, and from there she continued alone to Mexico. This was the last time she ever saw her brother. He and the rest of the family were murdered 7 years later. This photo has always haunted me. It represents the last moment when my Baba was in the presence of one of her murdered family members. Fast forward 81 years to June 2015. My son Ari was a participant on Ramah Poland journey. The students in his program traveled around Poland to learn about the rich Jewish life that existed there for centuries and to witness the remnants of the murder and destruction that took place. I arranged for Ari to visit Saxon Garden in Warsaw, and he and his entire group found the fountain where my Baba stood 81 years before. Here is a photo of Ari. He's wearing a light blue shirt and his friend Ellie standing in front of the fountain, with Ari holding the photo of his great-grandmother and her brother, who were standing in front of the same fountain. When he WhatsApped me this photo, I burst into tears. My grandmother and I were very close, but we never talked about her family who was killed. I knew it was so upsetting to her, so I didn't bring it up. How I wish I had asked her questions. After she passed away, I found her secret hiding place where she kept letters and photos she received from family in Poland. From clues in those letters and through a variety of sources, I discovered that my Baba's family members were shot to death in pits in Lithuania. I cannot let my aunts and uncles and cousins be forgotten. I share their story often, but I want future generations to know about them. That is why I was so emotional when I saw the photo Ari sent me. It was not just me telling him what happened. It was Ari who became the storyteller as he shared with his group why this spot in front of the fountain is significant. It's an experience he won't forget and he can share with his children one day. This is why I feel the David Labkovski Project is so important. Young people need to know about the Holocaust. It's shocking to learn how many people in the United States know little to nothing about it. It's not enough to read about it in textbooks, though. We need to engage students so they are empowered to learn more and teach others. That is the power of art, and that is the power of our curriculum. History comes to life through the personal journey and the paintings of David Labkovski. It's in color, it's tangible. Students can hold the paintings and analyze the brushstrokes and the color and the mood and the images. Through our program, the students form their own connections to the Holocaust, and they become the storytellers. That is the magic of the David Labkovski Project. I want to thank my parents, Ellie and Mark, who are my role models and have always inspired me to be active in the community. They give me so much love and support. Thank you, Leora, my dear friend, for your constant encouragement. Thank you to our board members, honorary chairs, event chairs, and the incredible committee who put this program together. A special thank you to so many of my close friends who joined the team. Thank you to my wonderful in-laws who are so supportive. I want to wish a mazel tov to the other honorees, Senator Henry Stern, and student leaders Lexi Price and Eva Trope. I love hearing you share your wisdom with us. Thanks to my friends and family, and to all of you for watching today, for honoring me with the Legacy of Hope Award, and for supporting this incredible organization. Our official program will be ending soon, but I hope you will continue to stay online to watch the Student Docent Exhibit, which is the culmination of one of our virtual educational programs. And please consider making a financial gift to the David Labkovski Project to help us empower the next generation. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Connie Marco, and I'm a founding board member. It's hard to believe that the David Labkovski Project started only 6 years ago. Our first major event was to work collaboratively with De Toledo High School students and faculty to create and install our first exhibit at Holocaust Museum Los Angeles. Our initial success with De Toledo led us, under the Director of Education Stephanie Wilson, to create our innovative, multidisciplinary, inquiry-based curriculum that has educated hundreds of students in middle schools, high schools, and universities. Thanks to our donors, we expanded our programming outside of LA area with our traveling exhibit documenting history through art. This exhibit and other docent and educational programs have traveled to many locations throughout the United States and abroad. This year, we rose up to the pandemic's challenge by shifting our classroom-based model and providing learning virtually with exhibits, lectures, and workshops, reaching even more students than we did the prior year. All these successes led to the California Assembly and the Los Angeles City Council to recognize the David Labkovski Project for its unique and much-needed Holocaust educational programs. And now, Evelyn will speak to you about what events and programs we are planning for this year.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Cotton, and I'm a founding board member and one of the event chairs for today. I have the pleasure of telling you about some of the upcoming events in 2021. We will have a Reflect and Respond program, followed by the virtual International Holocaust commemoration. We will have a spring University College Leadership program in the spring, an adult docent training program in the summer, and international virtual docent training program for middle and high school students in the fall. Thanks to my fellow event chairs, Leora Rakin, Malky Roden, Connie Marco, our outstanding event committee, Silent Auction Committee Brev Butkus and Deborah Levine, honorary chairs, Marlene Widower for designing the invitations, and student volunteers. We are pleased to announce that our 2022 Legacy of Hope honoree will be Jennifer Lopada. Before concluding, we'd like to thank you all for supporting our event, honoring Lisa Lena Fagan, and showing your commitment to recognizing our important mission to educate about the Holocaust using the artwork of Lithuanian Israeli artist David Labkovski. Never before have lessons of tolerance, acceptance, and knowledge been more urgent. Thank you.
My name is Amalia Abakasis. I am a sophomore at Shalhevet High School. This painting is a remarkable depiction of the world that was and his early life in Vilna from 1908 to 1932. So Vilna established its first Jewish community in the 1400s. Vilna was also known as the Jerusalem of Lithuania because of its focus on education and religion, which was continued through time. During the interwar period, the community struggled through severe conditions caused by the war and by poverty. But due to the strong community and work society, many homeless individuals and children, including David himself, were taught occupational skills. So in this painting, I noticed a lot of movement within the people. There are groups of people, including men, women, and children, picking up maybe food and other essential items from markets and little stands, which we see on the ground floors of these two buildings in front of us, most likely to bring back home to their families. I also notice that most of the men are wearing kippot, like we see over here, and most of the women are wearing head coverings, which we see over here and also over here with the group of women. You can also see a man over here wearing a talit in the first building, and then another man over here praying, also wearing